Okay, Boker Tov, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Okay, we're in the middle of the bracha of Rifa'enu. So we spoke last week about we ended with the story of Rav Kook and Hebrew University, right? When someone is sick, they can't worry about a lot of things in life that you like to worry about that are quite that not crucial but are nice. Like you can't play with your doll. The story is right when the daughter asked for her doll back, then you knew it was better. And Rav Kook said that the Jewish people have been basically sick for the last 1900 years. Exile is a disease. And therefore, we couldn't fully flourish, and that's what the Gemara says that Miyom Shachar Beit Hamikdash, from the time, the date that the temple was destroyed. God only has 4 cubits of Jewish law. The focus of Jewish life is Jewish law. So that's very nice, but that's a lament. That's actually not very nice. Miyom shachara beit hamikdash. From the day the temple was destroyed, God only has halakha. But if the temple were to be standing, we'd have many other things we would be concerned about. If you even in Jewish learning, Tanakh and Jewish philosophy, and all the other areas that are neglected, basically today still. In traditional yeshivot, they study only Talmud and only Talmud Bavli, and that's 99% of the curriculum, at least. So. Anyway, so that's what Rav Kook said at the opening of Hebrew University. Just it's worth mentioning. It's an important point that all great works in Jewish history were pretty much done at times of the relaxation. When you're now we're going to say like sick on a national level, and there's lots of persecution. People think, oh, the Jews were persecuted; they could sit and learn all day. That's not true at all. In other words, the great works of Jewish history were written when people had tranquility. Like take the Shulchan Aruch, Rav Yosef Kare, he gets expelled from Spain, but he's sitting in Sfat. The Rambam, when he's writing, he's living nice and peacefully in Egypt. The great works in the Ramah is living at the beginning of the golden age of Polish Jewry, right? All the great flourishing of Polish Jewry happened either generally before the Chmelnytsky massacre, before 1648. That's Rav Moshe Isserles is there, and the Maharshal and the Maharam and the Marshal, all these people living, and the Rav Shlomo Shachna, all these great figures of Ashkenazic Jewry are all living in a time where Polish Jewry is like really great. And I know how many people have been to Poland. I was there once, and you know what Poland's what Jews say it stands for? Anybody know? Poland.
Poland, here we
Rest
yeah.
until the Mashiach comes. This is like we've reached, our Gan Eden next to the Mashiach. Poland, here we are, and it's amazing. Polish Jewry was unbelievable. It was unbelievable, and I'm talking now really before the Chmelnytsky massacre, but then it recovered afterwards. And I don't have to tell anybody here that there were over 3 million. I mean, unfortunately, 3 million Polish Jews were killed in the Holocaust. 90% of Polish Jewry. But the Jerusalem Talmud was never properly finished because there was too much persecution. The Mishnah, you see, it's interesting. I was thinking about it. I'm not, I don't know exactly every moment, but the Mishnah was written, or the decision to write the Mishnah was taken after the destruction of the temple. I don't know exactly how and when, and if there was like a committee that got together, but clearly it was understood that things are going to change, and especially really after the Bar Kokhba revolt and Rav Meir. It's not totally accurate. People think Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi wrote the Mishnah. It's not really true at all. Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi collated the Mishnah. He was I wouldn't even say he was the editor of the Mishnah. He was the final editor of the Mishnah. He's been editing for 50 years. People have been editing the Mishnah. And I don't know if people are aware, the Mishnah contains maybe 5% of the Tannaitic literature of the time. In other words, there were many, what we would call Mishnayot. I don't know what you want to call them. There were many, paragraphs of learning. And Rabbi Yehuda, he selected from the tremendous corpus that was out there. He selected, I believe it's 4,192 Mishnayot, if I recall correctly. But there are 40,000, there are 80,000 other teachings. We know that parallel in Tosefta, and other sources. So this is not something one person can do, and it's not something somebody can do in 5 years. This was a 50-year project that was put together by many rabbis, and Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was like the final editor. And Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, many had very good relations with the Romans. The Romans, I mean, when we think of the Romans, we think of Tisha B'Av and the Hadrianic persecutions and all the terrible things they did to the Jewish people, which is true. But there was much time on the Romans. The Jews lived quite nicely. And even after this, and it's well known that the Talmud has a lot of stories with Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi and the Roman governors and stuff. So it was a time of relative tranquility. But soon afterwards, it got worse. And that's why most of the rabbis moved to Babel. By the 4th century, you have very little learning left in the land of Israel. In other words, there is a reason we all study Talmud Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud, and we don't study Talmud Yerushalmi. It's much better. It's later. It's more authoritative. You had greater rabbis. It's just, and it was properly edited, and it was also edited for a long, long time. Ravina and Rav Ashi sort of were the final editors, but it was edited even after them, and really before them. What put in. Now that we've returned to the land of Israel and we're sort of nationally more healthy, it's not a refuah shlema yet. It's unfortunately, but please God, but it's a little bit of a refuah. We're back to Israel. So today, the study of Yerushalmi, I don't know Yerushalmi at all. In fact, I don't know if I ever mentioned this story. That I think I mentioned this recently, but I don't know saying it was Yerushalmi. I for some reasons it's actually not good. At Chatayini Maskir, I don't even have a Yerushalmi at home. Like I don't even have a copy of it. Every once in a while today, I do look up something in the Yerushalmi, like I look up parallel thing. But today it's all on computer, so I don't feel the need. Like I can look on Safari and I can look in the Talmud Yerushalmi, and I do that when I mentioned once when David Weiss Halivni was at our house so over Shabbos. I think I spoke about him not so long ago. He was really a genius, Ilu Sheba Iluyim. He by the age of 9 he knew Baba Kama off by heart, and he was in the seminary for many years, so he's not whatever. And so I don't know. He was Orthodox, but he was he was a Talmud of Shaul Lieberman, and but of course going to the seminary sort of pushed him out of the what can I say, the Orthodox world. And of course his approach to Talmud was he had more of a critical approach, but he really was like really knew everything. He left the seminary, by the way, when they started ordaining women. It's kind of funny, like that's when the seminary in the 80s, I think, made the decision to ordain women. He said, I'm out of here. I cannot be part of the seminary anymore. As long as, when Shaul Lieberman was alive, they had the Machitz in the Minyan. It was a whole different world. Anyways, that's not for now. But he was at our house. We spoke on the Holocaust to us. Elliot Malamed, who founded actually Torah Motion with me, over 20 years ago, who now lives in Israel. So he used to often interview. He's really a fantastic interviewer. And so Holocaust Education Week in Toronto, they used to have. And so we interviewed him. He came to our house over Shabbos, and we interviewed him there, Rabbi Tradberg Shul, who might know Reuven Tradberg, who lives in Israel, whatever. And he came to our house, and all he did is learn all damage. He learned or he talked to the kids. That's all he did. Learning, it's a mamish, unbelievable. And so he asked me he wanted to look up something in the Yerushalmi. So I told him I don't have it. Boy, did he let me have it. What kind of what kind of a rabbi am I that I don't have a Yerushalmi? So he's right, but you know what? I still didn't buy one. I don't know. I should. I just don't. I don't know. I just haven't gotten around to it. But Halavai should know what's in the Bavli. I don't know. That's why that was really the attitude, and many people ignored the Yerushalmi. But Baruch Hashem, today we're back in Israel, so you have a lot of these things are being learned, and I don't know this at all, and this is sort of a new field. There are people working. There are differences on the we call Torah Eretz Yisrael. There was a difference in approach of in the Torah in the land of Israel and Torah in Chutz La'aretz. And this is something I think Rav Kook began with, and people now in Israel work on that to develop. Benny Gesundheit has spoken about that a little bit, even in the way we know in the Babylonian Talmud, they actually say some of the differences. The one of the main differences they say is the rabbis in Babel, you know what they do much more than the rabbis in Israel? They fight. Everything's a machloket. I forget, they quote a pasuk, Ne'imim, it's in Sanhedrin 24, I think. The Gemara, it's a whole thing that, oh, those rabbis in Bavel, they're fighting with each other all the time, and the rabbis in Israel, they get along with it much more. The Talmud was quite aware, and the Babylonian Talmud is much more questioning and back and forth. The Yerushalmi doesn't have that same structure, that back and forth, the argument. Everything's a machloket in the Babylonian Talmud. So already in the Talmud itself, and the Talmud compares the Babylon to darkness and Israel to light. So they were quite aware of the differences in learning between the Yerushalmi and the Bavli. So why? But the Bavli was much more authoritative because Jews lived in peace. Jews lived in peace, and it was really the Iranian. It was in Iraq, but it was the Sasanian. I forget how to pronounce it right. The Persians of that time. The Jews lived in relatively peace, and that's why they could produce everything that they produce. So when we say Rafenu, I mean there really is. It's really an important thing. You have to realize it. I mean that's our bracha is really talking on personal healing. We discussed we're in the personal section, but it's very important to note this idea that healing is very important when you're persecuted, when you're worrying about your life or your next meal or you're impoverished. It's very hard to learn, and that's why there's a halacha. Did everybody eat breakfast yet? I hope everybody ate breakfast. You're not allowed not to eat breakfast in the morning. So any doctor will tell you breakfast is the most important meal of the day. We all know that today. But the halacha says that. The halacha says you're not allowed to go more than 4 hours. I believe it's 4 hours into the day without eating. Sort of sosman tefillah. You have to eat by, let's say 10 o'clock in the morning, because you can't function properly. And the halacha doesn't want you to eat. So in the Shulchan Aruch it says you finish stuffing and you go eat. You have to go eat. So whatever. Fast days, okay, 6 days a year. 1 day in the Torah, we add that in. Okay, so once in a while we're supposed to remember. Anyways, on Tisha B'Av, you're not supposed to. Okay, but let's get back to the bracha itself. But that's just, I think, an important caveat. So we mentioned last week the double language of Rafenu. So I just want to, and we discussed why is it a double language, and we had a whole discussion about the view of the Ramban. In other words, that really tzaddikim shouldn't. If you're on a certain level, only God heals us. Ani Hashem Rafecha, and we said Mikan Shenitan Reshut V'Rapo Yirapeh, that in Mishpatim, where if you assault somebody, so you've got to pay 5 damages, but the only ones mentioned in the Torah are sort of like unemployment, that he can't go to work, and you have to heal him. V'Rapo Yirapeh, and it says it double because you have to heal him more than once. And the Gemara has this very strange language, Mikan Shenitan Reshut. The Rafeh. From here, we learned that the doctor is allowed to heal. What do you mean he's allowed to heal? So that's what we discussed last week, that we really want to focus on a certain theological level, that God is the ultimate healer. We know the same doctor, 2 people, the same illness. One person recovers with the same treatment and one doesn't. Well, what's that based on? Well, that's what we would say, based on God. So whatever. So there is this. Of course, everybody goes to a doctor. There's no yeshiva guy who says I'm going to learn all day and not go to a doctor. That doesn't exist. But the Ramban says it could exist in theory. We don't have people on that level, and the Ibn Ezra, as we mentioned, went so far as to say by internal disease, we only have the right to heal external human injuries because they're man-made, so man can heal them. But if there's what he called internal disease, which we know today may be man-made also, but whatever, by God, that we can't heal so much of this. Like I said, Ripley's Believe It or Not. But we do want to focus. Rafeinu Hashem and they were fed. Perhaps I said we're focusing on God's. God is our true doctor. So I just want to show you, of course, this language is based, as we often point out, not all the time, but that everything in the Siddur, at least according to many, is based on biblical verses. And this, of course, I don't ever explain why, right? Because did I ever explain why the Siddur is based on biblical verses? And if I did, who remembers? I don't remember, so why should you remember? Right. So did I mention this is the Abud Raham, who was the Spanish 14th century Spain, who was the one who wrote the first really we have first great commentary on the Siddur in very simple Hebrew. It goes through the Siddur, what it's based on, and his whole thesis is everything is based. It's not only a thesis. He shows it. He shows this phrase is based on this pasuk in Yirmiyahu and Yeshayahu and Tehillim and in Mishlei. It's all over the place. I mean, it's based from everywhere. And it's based on the Siddur. So why is that so? Based on Tanakh, why is this so important? I think it's really along the lines of Rav Soloveitchik says that we have no right to pray. All right. If you read back way back to the beginning, we discussed a few times this beautiful idea of the Ramban. I love this idea. I've been mentioning it for a while, that there is no obligation to pray. That's only the Rambam. The Rambam, my Maimonides feels there's an obligation to pray. And I want you to know he's a minority opinion. And when in this, I'm talking now on a biblical level. Everybody agrees rabbinically, but it's important to distinguish. Biblically, the Rambam is the only major medieval authority who is of the opinion that prayer is biblical in origin, which is kind of astounding if you think about it. The Ramban, Nachmanides, when he criticizes the Rambam for saying prayer, there's an obligation to pray, and the Rambam says only once a day. You don't have to pray the way we pray for half an hour. You have to pray for 1 minute. You have to say a little bit of Shevach Bakasha Bahoda, a little bit of praise. You can say one sentence, a little bit of asking God for our needs, another sentence, and a little bit of thanksgiving. 3 sentences, you fulfill your biblical obligation. As a matter of fact, that's so much so. The Magen Avram. We today live in a very religious generation. Baruch Hashem, our generations are better than the previous ones. It's not true. We discussed Nachni Katnu Hador. It really is not true for our generation. It was true in other generations, not this generation. We're Ma'alim Hadora. We're much higher. Most of us are much more learned than our parents, are much more observant. That's just the way the world is. So, but in the Middle Ages, women didn't daven. Women didn't daven. Today, most religious women do daven. It was just who did. We used to joke. Me and my friends used to joke that it's maybe not a nice thing. I won't say what neighborhood we said it because it play anywhere. The woman would go to shul and when Yom Kippur was on Shabbos. This year, and I mentioned a number of times when Mark Shapiro went to Tunisia before we did our Tunisia trip. He went to shul. There are 12 shuls in Jerba. He walked in and they don't have a mechitza in any of the shuls. So he went over to the rabbi. He says, "Where's the mechitza?" And they said the rabbi looked at him like with a straight face, and he thought Mark was out of his mind. He said, "Ma inyan nashim etzel beit knesset." What does a woman have to do with a shul? I never heard of a woman who went to shul. That was the culture. It still is the culture in certain places. So, but if according to the Rambam, they have to daven biblically, and the Mishnah is very clear: men and women have equal obligation in prayer. Whether it's rabbinic or biblical, what do you mean? Why? Because of course it's tefillah rachamim. Tefillah is asking God for mercy. We're asking God to heal us. Oh no, a woman who's sick doesn't have to pray to be healed. What are you, crazy? The obligation of prayer is equal to men and women. It's a misconception people have that somehow men are more obligated to pray than women. It's not true at all. So the Magen Avram, so why don't women daven? What happened? How come so many women don't daven? So he said, when they get up in the morning, they say Moda Ani. I don't know if that's true. So when they say Modani, and Modani is like davening because it's thanking God. It's a part of davening. It's a very difficult. It's a difficult Magen Avram for many reasons. He himself, I'm sure, knew it was difficult. He's being what we often rabbis do, or melamed zchut. When you have a basically religious community and people do something wrong, the rabbis try and justify what they do wrong. When you have a non-religious community and they do something wrong, the rabbis yell and scream at you. That's an important yesod. That's a major difference between conservative and Orthodox Judaism. In other words, Mark Shapiro says it all the time. He's 100% right. I think if the conservative movement had religious laity, they have people who went to shul every day, who kept Shabbos, who kept kosher, they just sat, the men and women together. Okay, whatever, they ate swordfish. No, the Aguz HaRabbanim said that swordfish was kosher too. It's only Rabbi Tendler. When Rabbi Tendler came along, swordfish became not kosher. So they followed the conservative psakim. If you had that, they could have found the justification for not davening with a mechitza. I'm not saying they should or shouldn't. I'm just saying we do many things. That's Chaim Soloveitchik's article. We do many things, and the rabbis will justify it post facto. Tosfot does it because when people are religious, obviously they're doing something. They're not going to do something wrong. So that's what the Magen Avram is. Nice religious women, and they don't daven, but I don't get it. They have to daven. They do daven. Modani is enough. Modani is enough. It's not really true, but no. So it's just very, very interesting. But davening is very short. So why am I telling you all this? So the Ramban says, as we mentioned, davening is a privilege. It's an act of kindness of God. It's such a beautiful Ramban. And the Rambam said, what do you mean his obligation to pray? I'm obligated to ask God to be healthy. Well, that's a ridiculous attitude. What do you mean I'm obligated? I'm lucky that God listens to my prayer. Our tradition teaches God will listen. Sometimes he'll say no, but God will listen to your prayer. That's an unbelievable act of chesed. And I've said this many, many times. If we could, it's very hard. If we could take the approach of the Ramban, boy, would that change our davening. With that, we view davening as an opportunity, not a burden, because it's hard. 3 times, we all know it's not always easy, and it's hard to get inspired and whatever. And okay, yes, Yochevet, what do you want to say? Yochevet, you want to say something? I see your hand is up. Maybe she's frozen. Okay, I don't know what's going on. Okay, you can hear me. Everybody can hear me still. Okay, fine. Okay, let's go on. Okay, maybe. Anyway, so getting back, why am I discussing all this? So what do you mean it's based on the Siddur? We're explaining why the Tefillot and the Siddur is based on Tanakh. So as Rav Soloveitchik was very into this notion, even though he tried to bring the Ramban and the Ramban together into this notion that prayer needs what he calls a matir. What allows us to pray? We're not allowed to pray. A chutzpah, who are we to approach God? But the Torah says you can pray. So if David HaMelech prayed, if Moshe Rabbeinu prayed, we can pray too. And that's what he calls a matir. The Rav explained Ashrei is the matir for davening. Before you're allowed to daven, you have to say Ashrei Yoshrei V'techa. That's what God says. If you say Ashrei 3 times a day, you get share in the world to come. But you need a matir. So I'm assuming that's the whole notion. Our whole tefillah is based on Tanakh. Tanakh is the matir. Tanakh is nivuah. Tanakh is prophecy. That's God's permission to man. God's speaking to man. And therefore, anything that's in Tanakh, we can copy. So if they pray for this, we can pray for that. So that's probably the philosophical reason why this stress that our tefillot are based on words in Tanakh. So let's just take a quick look here. Let me share my screen. So I'll show you where, and now this will, of course, answer why it's double language. And that is right here. Am I here? Yes, we're in Yirmiyahu. Parak 17. So, Rifa'eni Hashem be'erafeh Hoshi'enu be'ibashea kiti latiati. That's the bracha. Rifa'enu Hashem be'erafeh Hoshi'enu be'ibashea kiti latenu ata. There you have it, right there. So this is obviously would explain why the language is double. This is chapter 17 in Yirmiyahu. Now you'll notice, and of course this is a well-known thing, but I have to point out, Rifa'eni Hashem ve'erapeh, Hoshi'eni ve'ivashea kiti lati ata. So you notice, of course, it's in the singular. The pasuk in Yirmiyahu is said in the singular. We, of course, pray in the plural because we always pray in the plural because, first of all, it's not nice. Like, in other words, we should pray for everybody. But it's also a little bit of a chutzpah. It also makes it more powerful. It makes it more the Jewish people are approaching God. And we have this idea that's why davening with a minyan is stressed. It has nothing. It has a 1% of davening with the minyan is so you can answer Baruch Hu. 99% of why you daven with the minyan is because Lishmo el arinav el hatfilah. God listens to the prayers of a minyan more than the prayers of an individual. We as individuals with God are, who are we? A bunch of sinners. We, the Jewish people, are unbelievable. That for 4,000 years, after everything we've gone through, we have Jews who dedicate their lives to God. Unbelievable people. There's nobody like the Jewish people. That's us as a people. Individually, I don't know if that's like 1,000% so true, but that's really how the halacha views it. You as an individual, we have nothing. Who are we to stand before God? We as a nation. That's why davening. We're getting to Elul this week. That's why the Rab has a whole essay on this, and I'll show it. Bein hayachid v'hatzibur. How where we say Hashamnu is different, right? When the yachid davens on Yom Kippur, where do we say al chet? When do we say al chet?
in
At
the
the end of
silent
Shemona
Shemona
Esrei.
Esrei.
When in the Shemona Esrei?
In the
When?
silent Shemona Esrei.
After Mavarech Moshe Rabbeinu at the end, very end.
Correct.
At the very end.
And when do we say it? When the Chazan repeats?
during the middle of Chazar Sashas.
What's the difference?
Union of community.
So the Rav says we have no right to approach God to ask for forgiveness. So only after we finish davening. In other words, we finish davening, it's a chutzpah in the middle of davening to say vidui. So at the end, before I go, I forgot. Like, in other words, the Rav describes in this beautiful language. It's like, okay, I have to do it, but I don't really have the right to do it in the middle of the Shmona Esrei. But the tzibur, it's right in the middle. It's the focal point of the Amidah is asking for Mechila, and that's why, of course, he explained it. That's a nice, happy tune. It's not like that's a sad tune. And the Rav said when I think he writes that he only heard this tune. I don't know if it's this exact tune they did when he came to Germany, and when the Rav went to University of Berlin, and they were singing happy songs, and he couldn't figure, what were they singing happy songs? You're asking God to forgive us. Oh, we sinned. We did this. What are you? So he said, no, because the tzibur doesn't ask God to forgive us. The tzibur demands God to forgive us. The individual asks God, a chutzpah. But okay, well, what can we do? We're going to ask God. But the tzibur doesn't ask. So the Rabbi has a whole thing. So that's why we done with the minyan. That's why we done with the minyan. So yeah, say Kedusha. Okay, that's nice too. But that's not the real reason, which is why if it can be done, we said many times, women should also go to minyan. I don't know, like ideally. Okay, they can't go. And I've mentioned it many times. Rabbi Lichtenstein said there were times he didn't go to minyan when the kids were young. And then it's not only the woman who has to do carpool. Sometimes the husband can do carpool, and the husband do carpools during minyan. So he misses minyan that morning. So his wife goes to minyan instead. I assume that's what happened. I don't know. I didn't ask Tova, but I assume when Rabbi missed minyan, I don't know what was going on. But anyways, anyways, that's really the idea. So all our prayers are going to be in plural, but that's a Rifa'eni Hashem. It's based on Yirmiyahu, and of course we have this by Nichum Avelim, Rahman al-Islan. Hamakom Yinachem Atchem Betoch Sharch Avlei Tziyam Yerushalayim. We combine the mourning of the individual with the mourning of the Jewish people. Of course, that's what we say when we say on Shabbos, when we make a mishabech with Toch Shar Chalei Yisrael. So that's what we do. But it's based on a pasuk in Yirmiyahu. We always change it to we change it to the plural. The Gemara says one who prays for his friend, he'll be answered first. It's basic derech eretz. It's not nice to just pray for yourself. It's a musar haskell. Like, we have to do everything we do. Just don't be concerned about yourself. Be concerned, even when praying for our own needs, even when you're sick. God forbid, or somebody who's sick, and we discussed last week, you can add it in the middle. You can add anyone, but you can always add a prayer in the middle of that prayer. For economics and Barech Aleinu, can always add a prayer in that theme, or you can add in Shemei Tefillah. But for reasons that I don't exactly know, it tends to be that people only add it in the Siddur. They only put it in Rafeinu. They have in the Siddur. Now I have the Magerman Siddur, whatever J. Goldsmith put out. It's right in the middle. And you put in the name, B'toch Shar Chalei Yisrael, in the middle of Rafeinu. I don't know why they have it only here. It'd be any bracha, but that's health is, I guess, something we take more. Obviously, it's more concerned. Without health, you can't have anything, as I explained. Health is, and okay, it's very important. The other thing I just want to mention, I was thinking of, I don't remember if I mentioned last week. I may have, but I'm going to develop it. Why this is the eighth bracha of the Shmona Esrei, right? We said Geula is the seventh bracha because the Gemara says Geula will come after the Shemitah year, even though it's talking about personal redemption. We spoke about it's connected to redemption. No, the Gemara, the first bracha, because without wisdom, the imein dat, imein chachma dat bina minayin, like you havdalah minayin. Right? Without wisdom, you don't know what to pray for. Obviously, that's the first thing we need to understand. People don't even understand the problems they have. So why is this bracha Rifa'enu? It's the eighth bracha from the beginning, the first three, and this is the fifth of the middle brachot. Anybody? So I guess I didn't mention it last week. Okay, so the Gemara says, because Brit Milah. Brit Milah is God. When the Gemara says you have to imitate God, right? So the Gemara in Sota says, the Gemara has two things we have to do. We have to imitate the character of God, and we have to imitate the actions of God. In other words, Hashem is, I forget the two food, Hashem, like the 13 midot, God is Hashem Hashem Rachel Mechan. The same way God is merciful, we have to be merciful. But then the Gemara says, so we have to be merciful and kind. So those are character traits. And then the Gemara says, the same way God clothes the naked, as he did by Adam, we have to clothe the naked. The same way he buries the dead, as he did by Moshe, we have to bury the dead. The same way he visits the sick, as he did by Abraham. Abraham had Brit Milah. Thank you very much. V'halachta b'drachav. Mahu, no, but that's Mahu Rachum Afata Rachum, right? Right.
Yeah.
You should follow the path of God, 100%. Well, thank you. So we have to. So that's where God sent the other three, whatever messengers came, and then God, Avram told God to put God on call waiting. We don't have call waiting anymore, right? But I used to hate that, right? Call waiting. But that's what Avram did. It's a powerful idea. Avram put God on call waiting. He was speaking to God, and Avram said, "Oh, I have another call coming in. I have these 3 Arabs walking there in the street. I better welcome them." Right, and that's what the Gemara says. Gedola hachnasat orchim mikabala pnei hashchina. It's greater to welcome guests. It's more important. Gedola, it's better, more important than kabbalah pnei hashchina, than talking to the divine. It's pretty insane, no? Isn't that? But of course, that's what Judaism is all about. Bein adam lechaver always trumps bein adam lemakom. Never a discussion. So anyways, but that's God visiting the sick. So we have to visit the sick, and that's the 8th day of the Brit Milah. So that's what the Gemara says. So we put Rafeinu as the 8th bracha. I mean, that's one of the reasons. Again, it's part of this, they have to flow in, but that's what the Gemara in Megillah says. It's the 8th bracha corresponding to the Brit Milah. So I was thinking, you'll tell me if I'm out of my mind, but I thought based on the Maharal, I know very little about the Maharal. I don't know how to read the Maharal. I some of the things he says, I quote something he says, which are beautiful, but the Maharal was a philosopher, whatever. But we were just in his shul in Prague a few weeks ago, and but the Maharal, this is the thing, it has this notion that we know numbers in Judaism are very important, and the first number of the Torah, of course, the first basic number is 7. Right, we know 10 is an important number. 40, 40 is an important number. 40 is transition. 40 days of the flood. 40 days of Mount Sinai, etc. 7, of course, is the cycle of nature. The 7 days of the week, and in the 7th month, of course, is Rosh Hashanah. Our holidays are in the 7th month, and getting the Torah is 7 weeks, and after 7 years is Shemitah. 7 and Rahman is 7 days of Shiva, and 7 days after wedding, etc. 7 is the natural cycle. So what's 8? So 8 is lamala min hateva. That's how they explain. I don't exactly know what this means. It's above nature. That's why Hanukkah is like 8 days, because it's like the candles lighting is a miracle. That's like works not in the laws of nature, and that's why Shmini Atzeret, right? They talk about Shmini Atzeret like that after the days of Sukkot. So I don't exactly know what this means, but I was thinking that maybe we can tie this into healing. You'll tell me if you like this idea or not. The Gemara said, who was the first person in the Torah who got sick?
Yaakov.
Why? What happened before Yaakov? No one got sick?
Avraham.
I'm sorry?
Avraham at the
It
bridge.
was the right time. They had no warning in advance that they were
Right.
going to.
So the Medrash picks up. We don't know, of course, but the Medrash picks up on this idea. Why is Yaakov the first person who gets sick? And they call Yosef Vayichazek Yisrael. He got a little bit better, and then he blesses his children. So the Medrash picks up on this idea, and it says that you're saying until Yaakov, people sneezed and they died. That's why when somebody sneezes, you wish them long life, Gesundheit, because that was the way people would die. You had no notice, and the Medrash says Yaakov Avinu prayed. He wants notice to die. He doesn't want to just die like that. You have to prepare, and that's a big discussion. How long do people want to be dying for? Like people, you don't want to die for 5 years either, whatever. But we all understand. And so Yaakov Avinu prayed that he should have the merit to get sick before he died. That's why Yitzchak, when does Yitzchak call Esav to give him a blessing?
At the age that Avram died?
He said within 5 years of when between his mother and his father was trying to figure it out.
Right, long before.
Long before, yeah. So if I'm not mistaken, I have to go look at Rashi. I didn't look this up now, but okay, we know they were approximately 15 when Yaakov bought the Bechor at the age of 15. And it's, I believe, the Medrash works out because I have to do with how old he was. He's 91 when Yosef is born. There's a whole calculation because he's 130. You know, we can work out some of the years, and there's 14 missing years, and that's where they come up with this idea he was learning in yeshiva for 14 years. Okay, so they work out he was 63 years old when he stole the blessing from Esav, from Yitzchak. He was 63 years old. No, if he was 63 years old, that means Yitzchak was 123. That was 57 years before he died. What does the pasuk say? Right. He says, I'm going to die. Let me bless you. He lived for another 57 years.
Rashi says that 5 years before your parents passed, that's when you should start thinking about that you might be.
So that works. That 123. His mother died at 127. Why didn't do it a year earlier? I don't know. But okay, that works out. Yeah, but there is an idea like that, right? That so, anyways, because he didn't know when he's going. So Yaakov Avinu was the first person who is sick, described as sick in the Torah, and this is how the Medrash picks up this whole very nice idea of that. So I thought perhaps that. Getting sick is a change in the nature of the world. I don't know, maybe I'm just making this up, but in the natural world, the way that God created the world, you're not supposed to get sick. Because getting sick is not pleasant. Who wants to get sick? I mean, a lot of people say they would like to die, like, get a heart attack and drop dead. They don't want to suffer in the hospital for 2 years. Yeah, everybody knows what I mean, right? So there's this balance. So in many ways, getting dying right away is the nature of the world. And then Yaakov Avinu prayed to God to change the nature of the world. So okay. And I was thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong, Yaakov Avinu is the first one to get sick. Who's the first person to get better?
Avraham.
Okay, so I want to say Avram. So we obviously we're skipping Avram in this whole thing, right? We say God visited Avram, but it's a different type of sickness. In other words,
Miriam?
I'm sorry?
Miriam?
So that's what I thought. Excellent, right? But just to finish out Avram, and Avram wasn't sick dying. He did a mitzvah, a bri milah that caused pain. Let's say he was in pain instead of sick. I wouldn't say he was sick. He was in pain. There is a difference. So, right.
Rabbi, he was 99 years old.
Yeah, I understand that. And he didn't have an anesthetic. Yeah, I get it. That's why he was
and
very
then
painful.
there's Naaman and Chizkiyahu.
Yeah, no, that's later. But in Tanakh, I think Yocheved is right. The first person to get better is Miriam. El na rafan Allah. In other words, that's the first prayer for somebody to heal. It's five words, right? El na rafan Allah, right? Isn't that that's what Moshe Rabbeinu says? So I don't know. So I thought that maybe whether it really ties into why this is the eighth bracha, that's I think a little bit of a stretch. But I think there is something it's just interesting to note how in God's original plan of creation, so to speak, is you didn't get sick, you sneezed and you died. Yaakov Avinu said, because there is something to prepare for you. Shov yom echad lifnei mitatcha. Repent one day before you're going to die. You want to prepare before you die. You want to bless your kids. That's what Yaakov did. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu did. You get an opportunity to say goodbye to people. So that is a great bracha, but whatever, there's this little bit of, I would say, attention, but it seems to be that there was a change in the how the world worked. And like I say, and only now Moshe prays for Miriam. That's the first time somebody gets better. Again, I don't know if that's exactly total sickness, sarat. It's a different type. It's but whatever it is, that's the first time we have a prayer for somebody to get better, and the prayer worked. Of course, we know, I guess the best way is the way Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam had it, that they died suddenly, but they knew when their death was coming. In other words, God called out, okay, you're going to die. He died binishika, through the kiss of God, so to speak. But they knew, so they had time to prepare, but there was no pain. So that's the ideal, of course. So that's what the Torah describes by Moshe and Aaron, and the rabbis say the same by Miriam. The Torah, out of, I don't know, modesty reasons, whatever, didn't want to describe it by Miriam, but that's how the rabbis understand that Miriam also who is really the heroine. I mean, she's in many ways more important than Moshe, which is why we had water in her merit, and we had food in Moshe's merit. Obviously, well, no, water is more important than food. Okay, let's continue. So that's Rifeinu Hashem and therefore Hosheinu v'Neshe. We discussed last week Refuah to Yeshua, to redemption. That's what we spoke last week, and they began this week. Rav Kook's story: when the people are healthy, then we can have redemption. Now, this next phrase, somebody help me out. Ki tehilatenu ata. What does that mean? God heal us, Rafeinu Hashem and Rafei in the plural, right? Hoshienu in the plural, save us, heal us, and save us, or redeem us, lahoshiatchem, however you want to translate that word. Ki tehilatenu ata, because you are our praise. Ki, because, right? Tehila, praise. You're our, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. God,
Rabbi,
Yeah.
I'm going to change a lot. If we are dependent on you, kluyim becha, from the word tala, we are dependent on you. Everything that we do, we dependent on you.
That's
So-
fine, but that's not what it says here. It
No,
says
I
you are our
know.
praise.
I know, but the praise is because we are dependent on you, we praise you.
Right. So the
Later,
simple
by
meaning, right?
default.
I would say the great praise of God is He can heal us. That's like
Yeah.
you get sick and you can get healed. That's
But
it's
then we thank him. But then we thank him.
right. That's what we're
Then
doing.
we
So
thank him so that the hilah comes after that we are dependent on him. Then we comes the tehillah.
right. Although in context, it seems to mean, in other words, we praise God that He heals us, right? But it's not. But the way it's phrased is heal. It's not that because you heal us, we praise you. Is you should heal us because that's your praise, or kita latin. That's the praise. Yeah, it's the same thing. That's the praise of God. Kita latinu ata. You are God worthy to be praised. How do we see that you should be praised? By healing somebody. We everybody knows, right? When you know, it's always harder the second time, right? In economics, right? Everybody knows to build a business is hard. To go bankrupt and rebuild that business is 10 times as hard. To rebuild is always way, way harder than building. That's the famous midrash. That's how Rav Soloveitchik explained the beautiful midrash that God created 974 worlds, right? You know that midrash? God created 974 worlds before this world. So some scientists like to use that midrash. Okay, I don't get excited about that. You know, our world is 15 billion years old, but the Torah, we're only 6,000 years old, 5784, whatever. So but the medrash says God created many worlds. So the many worlds were over 15 billion years. Okay, I don't get excited about that, but if you like that, that's great. Nothing wrong. But Rav Soloveitchik, of course, explained, because Rav Soloveitchik was not bothered by any conflict between science and Torah. There cannot be any conflict between science and Torah. Only atheists believe there are conflicts between science and Torah, because God created the world. That means He created the science, and God gave us Torah. So it cannot be that science and Torah conflict. If you believe they conflict, it means you're an atheist. I mean that in all seriousness. I'm using sort of harsh, sharp language, but absolutely anybody who believes that there's a conflict between science and Torah is an atheist. So either we don't understand the science properly, that's true, or we don't understand Torah properly. And as the Rambam famously says, if he would be convinced that the world was eternal, like the Greeks said, he would reinterpret Bereshit Bar Elohim. He has no problem. And Rav Soloveitchik was the same way. And we're not bothered. The Torah story of creation is not a physical story of creation. It's a moral story of creation. You can't have vegetation before the sun. I mean, you can't have day 4 for day 3. But the Torah is not telling us physical creation. Many people interpret that way. So either they say they actually contradict, or they come up with all these, ways to explain a day is a billion years. They have all these different ways to explain it. I prefer the much better approach is the Torah is not telling us physical creation. Anyways, the Rav Soloveitchik explicitly says that in The Emergence of Ethical Man. One of the books they put out after he died, The Emergence of Ethical Man. So he's not bothered by these questions of science. He can reconcile them. That's not the issue. Everything in the Torah is moral. The Torah is not a science book. So the Rav explains, so what does it mean that God created 974 worlds before this one? So it's to teach us that it's really hard. It's really hard to rebuild the world after it's lost. And that's the message for man. We have to imitate God. God's merciful. We have to be merciful. So God creates worlds. We have to create worlds. That's why the first mitzvah is to have children. That's the greatest act of creation. That's creating a new world. That's the highest form of imitating God. So the Torah wants to tell us, the Midrash is telling us, even God, so to speak, kiviyachol, couldn't create, he had a tinker. He had to create 975 words. He only got it right on the 975th time, so to speak. That's not exactly what, but God creates and destroys, you create again. What's 974? It's like a weird number. Like God created 974. Where does that come from? Where's 974 worlds come from? Of course, you realize it can't be random. I mean, it could be, but why 974? Because 974 plus 26 is 1,000. And there were 26 generations before the Torah was given. So really, God created, in essence, like 1,000 worlds, because the first 25 generations, like without Torah, God created this world, Bereshit, the world was created for Yom HaShishi, right? The world was created for giving the Torah. It just took 26 generations for that to happen. And that's why every Shabbos morning we say, Hodul Hashem ki tov ki li olam chasto, Yomar Yisrael ki li olam chasto, Hodul Elohim ki li olam chasto. There are 26 verses there, if you want to count them tomorrow. Those represents that the world existed, ki li olam chasto. The world only existed through the kindness of God, because without Torah, the world didn't deserve to exist. So that was 26 generations. So added on to 974, 1,000. That's a nice number. Okay. Anyways, so that's but why am I saying all this, right? Because so anyways, that's how do we get to this? I don't remember. What is it? Right? This is God's praise. The way we praise God is the fact that his great praise is through healing. I don't know. I must have some reason I wanted to connect that. Remind me, otherwise I'll think of it. But it's interesting. That God is it's very hard to translate, because you are our praise. In other words, it means the praise of God is that he heals people. It's also that's the great idea, right? That he, that's what I'm saying, right? You can rebuild when you're sick to get better. I went on a long tangent there, right? When it's one thing to be healthy, but it's harder to get healthy after you're sick. It's one thing to build the business, it's harder to rebuild it after bankruptcy. So this is a great praise of God, that even after people are sick, or even we're sick, to go back to your presence. And that's a great gift of God. That's great praise, that we get a second opportunity and we get a second lease on life. Somebody, and I'm sure people know people, maybe some people happen to, people had a very close brush with death. Somebody, Rahman al-Islam, maybe had all kinds of brushes of death people can have, but let's say somebody had cancer 15 years ago, and the doctors told them they have 6 months to live, and here we are 20 years later, and the Baruch Hashem, they're totally healthy. Usually people like that, their second lease on life often is lived much better, as much because they see, unfortunately, that's what it takes. We're happy-go-lucky, and when you face death, it puts a perspective. That's the whole idea of Yisker, to remind. That's the whole idea of why we do these things, to remind us that the seriousness of life. But it's hard. We don't like to think of that for good reasons. I get it. It's depressing. We don't want to think about it too much on the one hand. On the other hand, it's important to think about it. You have to find the proper balance. But somebody who faced death, who stared death, is going to have a different way of looking at life. It's kind of lahavdil, I don't know lahavdil, but it's kind of like a Baal Tshuva. Very often Baalei Tshuva are much more serious about their religious life, because they feel for 20 years they missed everything, and they have to catch up. People who grew up, we take it more for granted, so we'd have to work for it, right? It's the same thing. Everybody knows that the people who earn the money have a very different attitude than their kids and grandkids who inherit the money, right? There's a huge difference between the Holocaust survivors who are billionaires and multimillionaires and their children and grandchildren. I don't have to say anymore. I think we all understand. It's different. When you earn the money, you have a different attitude towards it. When the money comes to you, when you were born and, you into whatever, you have a different attitude. So when you faced health crisis, so that's greatness, to be able to be sick and be healthy. So maybe that's what it means. But it's a funny expression. I do find it's a funny expression. Then I was thinking, how many times I said Shemon Esrei in my life? A lot. Tova, you figure out. You can tell everybody how old I am and figure out how many times I've said Shemona Esrei in life. You can do the math. Yes, Steve. Tova will do the math while you ask your question. I think you have a question, Steve.
I have a question. Run the math by me again. The 974 plus 26. What's this 26 generations for what? What?
26 generations that the world existed by the kindness of God, despite the fact that the Torah had not been given. From Adam to Noach is 10, to Avram is 20, and then it's 6 generations until Moshe, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Levi, Kahat, Amram, and Moshe.
Okay, so just to say it, so our world could have existed billions of years ago in the sense of the physical world, but the 974 worlds are the worlds of humanity, quote unquote, whatever, right?
Without Torah, correct.
We could understand it that way.
So I said that's how some people who are very concerned with who read Bereshit as sort of more literal and seeing, oh, there's 6 days of creation, but how does that jive? They don't want to ignore science, but they want to reconcile it. So I don't feel it has to be reconciled. For Soloveitchik, many people, it doesn't have to be reconciled. One is a science and one is morality. But if you want to reconcile, there are lots of books, people reconciling them. But the Genesis and the Big Bang, and there's tons of Faith and Fossils, all these books written by Gerald Schroeder and all these scientists who were into this, who were trying to show that here are the dinosaurs and here's evolution. So what some of them want to say is that's the 974 worlds. Our world is 6,000 years, but the universe, whatever the Earth is 15 billion years, because 974 worlds have already existed that are incorporated into this Earth. The Earth keeps getting built and rebuilt, keep destroyed. They had nuclear war. I guess in the last world they ended it with nuclear war, and who knows how whatever. I know that's not so nice to say because it gets people all upset, because who knows what will happen to our world. But it's everybody knows the famous statement of Albert Einstein. It's right that they asked him what World War III will be fought with. He said he doesn't know, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. That he so we can only joke about it, because if you take it, even though it isn't a joke, but otherwise you'd go nuts. It's that's why we need to be normal. That's why people don't like thinking about death all the time. You got to be normal, but it's something to think about. It's very interesting. Just this week, I was reading. Was it Aaron Rakefet's article in Chakira? I don't remember. Maybe he was talking about the Rav on Das Torah, whole thing. And he said there, I think it was there, that the Rav said that the Rav, when he was in Berlin, I think, was very good friends with somebody who was a student of his grandfather, was a top student of Rav Chaim. And then he then became, he was an observant Jew. He then worked with Albert Einstein. He became a great scientist, and he was one of Albert Einstein's assistants. And he was describing Einstein to him. And he said, Einstein had great intuition, amazing intuition, like nobody ever had before. He could just see in 1 second what the issues are, but he was very bad at organizing, explaining, conceptualizing it. I don't know. And that's why he needed all his assistants to write it. I have to read it again, but it was actually quite interesting how this guy who learned with Rav Chaim, sort of then to when he, worked with Einstein and what he thought. Anyways, but that's the whole world. But so whatever it is, but the world, the idea of that midrash, of course, is that Torah is the basis of the world. So those 970, these 26 generations since the creation of this world is only existing from the chesed, the kindness of God. But I did want to something. So I was asking Tova how many times I said, Shemona Esrei. It's over 50,000 times.
Over 55,000.
Over 55,000. Okay, you don't have to. Okay, over 55,000. Okay,
that's
okay.
assuming. Okay, that's assuming you started Shemona Esrei when you were 7 or 8. Okay, or 10.
I used to. Okay, but I don't know. When I was 7 and 8, I didn't daven 3 times a day.
No, I calculated it from when you were 13.
Calculated I'm 13. So everybody, now the trick is a point. Everybody can figure out how old I am based on 55,000 times of saying Shemona Esrei. So I don't think I noticed this in 55,000 times. What can I tell you? Et chatai ani maskir hayam. This is why I thank you so much for coming to this class and forcing me to prepare. You guys are great. I gained so much, and I really have to thank you. Ki tilatenu ata. So I was thinking, why should God heal us? In other words, that's what we say. God heal us because that's your praise. In other words, don't heal us for us. In a sense, we're saying to God, heal us for your sake. The same way God redeem us for your sake, right? Leman Shemecha, for your sake. But I think in most brachot, well, let's say, let's go back. So we say, God, give us wisdom. Okay, give us wisdom. Return us to your Torah. Certain brachot have a reason, and certain brachos don't have a reason. That's what I was thinking about last night. So I haven't yet come out with a sort of a explanation to why this is so. But who wants to quickly tell me? I had to open up my siddur and sort of go through bracha by bracha. Which brachas have a reason that God should do what we ask him, and the other brachas don't have a reason. If assuming ki means a reason, so I want to give some other explanation. So you have God should forgive us. Why should God forgive us? Because God is a forgiving God, right? Then this we're gonna have to renew. Ki goel chazak ata. God redeem us because God, you're a goel chazak. Rifa'enu, God, you should redeem us. Ki tilatenu ata. Or it's not really that. It's coming up. It's ki el melech rofei neman v'rachaman ata. We'll get there probably next week. I see. Ki el melech rofei neman v'rachaman ata. God should heal us because you are a neman, a faithful and merciful healer. Then barech aleinu, God make a gear. We don't say because you're the one who controls the economy or you give rain. That's not what we say. Just say make a nice year. Tikab shofar bekabetz. God gather us for the four corners of the world. Okay, Baruch Hashem. We don't say because Kiata hamikabetz et Moshe. We don't say that. And then the next bracha, Hashivenu Avinu Hashiva Shavtenu, justice. Return the judges. We don't say V'tzatkenu b'mishpat, and we should have justice. Baruch Hashem. We don't say Kiata, you are the honest judge. We don't say that. And the next bracha. Vilamalshinim, right? To have the takeout on the slanderers. We just say, we don't say why, we just say Shoveravim Machne Zedim. Alat Sadiqim, we sort of say it on the righteous, Ki b'chabatachnu. Maybe that's not a broad sentence, but then we go, Etzam V'liur Shleim Yircha, Ubnei Ata B'karav V'chisei David. We don't say Ki Ata, you're the one who built Jerusalem. Bonei Yerushalayim, V'etzamach David. Same thing, we don't say it. We do say it in Shomei Tefillah, Ki ata shomei tefillah mecha Yisrael, because you hear all the praises of God in mercy, therefore you should be Shomei Tefillah. So I found this very...
Rabbi, there is addition there. Ve'al teshivenu rekam milfanecha.
Right, Ki ata, because, so I'm saying, I'm saying like 5 of the brachot say a reason. The reason God should do it is because this is what he does. God is a mochel v'soleach. He's a rofei neman. He's ki ata shomei tefillah. But in other brachos we don't. So I'm trying to think about, I haven't fully developed the thesis. I didn't see anybody write about this yet, but maybe but I found this interesting. Maybe you don't find it interesting. Why certain of the brachot give a reason. You should do this because this is your character. You are the one who hears our prayers. You are the one who heals. In other ones, we say, God, we should have a good economic success. God bless us with economic success. We don't say because God determines our economic success.
Rabbi, there is a Chazal said that the Kadosh Baruch Hu is looking for our brachot and our tefillot. So if this is correct... I'm
not sure what that means exactly, but okay.
That he is waiting for
it says that by Sarah, Rivka, and Rachel. Why were they infertile? Because God loves the tefillah of the tzaddikim. It's a very difficult, strange midrash. Correct.
Okay, so if it is correct, if it is correct to come to Hashem, say ki ata, because you are capable. Like you are capable.
Right, but he's capable for all of them. In other words, each one of the brachot, God is capable. In other words, I'm saying either we should say it on none or all. So I have to figure out, I have to think about it a little more.
In 18, there's also brachot yechidot.
No, but we discussed everything said in the plural. In other words, my question that we have to see, it's getting late. My question is, why do we have a reason for some and not for others? Either have a reason for none. If you're assuming Ki Amalch, in other words, we're saying, God, you should do this because this is who you are. But we only say that by certain of the brachot. So I don't know, this struck me at midnight last night. I was sort of, going over and I was thinking, and so I didn't fully develop. I don't know if I will be able to. I was thinking there's something special, or no, it's just a language. Maybe, and this I really have to look up, maybe that language key appears somewhere in Tanakh, how we started this year, that phrase. But I don't know. So anyways, I just throw that out for you. Okay, Zev, yeah, question? You are muted, Zev. Zev, you're muted.
You said Baruch Aleinu doesn't have a reason. It does have a reason.
It does. Yeah, I said Barech Aleinu.
You said it doesn't. It does. It says Kiel Tovim Itat Baruch Hashanim.
No, only in Nusach Sfard.
What do you mean? It doesn't say Kiel Tovim Itat Baruch Hashanim at the
That's
end.
correct. Not in Nusach Ashkenaz. You're
Really?
correct. That's even you just made the question stronger. That's correct. I'm having Nusach Ashkenaz. I'm thinking, no, it doesn't. Maybe I was Barech Aleinu at Hashanaz v'kominei tzvatal v'tem bracha apnei adamav zvenu v'dva ubarech natenu kashanim atavot baruch at Hashem mevarech hashanim. Nusach Ashkenaz. You daven Nusach Ari. What can I do? Nusach, you know what? But okay, what can I tell you?
It says it too.
I understand. So that's fascinating. So you have to, you see that's a very interesting difference. Okay, well, we have to look into that. Okay, it's late. Let's just quickly review and take any questions. Okay, we discussed good things happen when the Jewish people live in peace. Raffaini, we need healing on a national level. The great works of Jewish literature were written when people could devote their energies and didn't have to worry about being persecuted where the next meal is in Polish Jewry. And that's the difference between the Jerusalem Talmud and the Babylonian Talmud, how important national health is. And then we discuss, of course, we always pray. We're praying in it's based on the verse Raffaini in the Yirmiyahu, right? The first phrase comes straight. You see it right there in Yirmiyahu. It's singular. But of course, and we explain that prayers are based on what's written in Tanakh, as Soloveitchik says, prayer is a gift of God. What right do we have to pray? Who are we to approach God? But God approached us. God told us in Tanakh through prophecy that we can use these phrases. So therefore, we can pray with the phrases that are found in Tanakh, and of course, then we put it in the plural. We manipulate. Well, it was interesting. The commentaries in the Siddur were bothered. How can they manipulate the pasuk in Yirmiyahu? In other words, it's in Yirmiyahu. It's written in singular. In other words, if you're basing it on Tanakh, so you have to say what's in Tanakh. So we're taking Tanakh for Taichen for Besser, right? We're making Tanakh a little better. We're putting it into plural because we have to. When we pray, we have to pray with other people. B'toch Shar Chalei Yisrael. That's what we have to do. And what else did major things we discussed? And the way we discussed why it's the 8th bracha related to Brit Milah. That's what the Gemara says. And then we gave this whole, I don't know if it's true, but the idea is the idea of the Maharal that 8 is above nature, and maybe healing is a whole changing of nature, because when God created the world, nobody got sick. You sneezed and you died, and that was the prayer of Yaakov Avinu that he could merit to get sick. But it's only Miriam. It's very interesting, I think. Unless I'm missing somebody, Miriam is the first person to get better. I find that fascinating idea. Anyways, and then we discussed Kita Latenu Ata. This is the praise of God, or God's praise is the fact that he heals people. We give you really a second chance. And we know people get a second chance, often take much more advantage of it. Yes, Yocheved, what did you want to ask?
Oh, so I just had an idea about the question you had about why it says ki in certain brachos and not in others.
Okay,
I don't know, just a shot in the dark. So maybe when we're asking Hashem to forgive us and to personally redeem us and to heal us, maybe we have to give a reason, because really those things are really up to us, our bechira.
That's the lines of I was thinking of. Yeah, right. I was very good. So you know what? Let's leave that till next week. There must be. Thank you for that. Okay, let me just quickly go through the questions in the chat box, and then what's the source of the Ramban on Tfilat? That's Shorish. Number 5. The Rambam wrote the Sefer Mitzvot, and the Ramban has Mitzvah saying number 5, where the Rambam has 31 disagreements with the Rambam on the 613 mitzvot. They disagree on 31 mitzvot, whether they meet mitzvot. So number 5, which the Rambam calls it a mitzvah, and the Rambam says, no, it's not a mitzvah, it's an act of chesed. There's a gradual weakening with age and blindness. Yes, of course. That's the greatness of Moshe. The Torah stresses that Moshe didn't get sick. In other words, Moshe was lucky, and Aaron, they were totally healthy. It's a pasuk in the Chumash. His eyes were totally at the 20/20 vision, even at age 120. The gematria of Yud Kei Vav Kei is 26. Very interesting. Okay. 26 generations, Yud Kei Vav Kei. You have to see if there's a connection. I don't know. It's interesting to have to think about that. After the rebuilding, things can become even better. That's also true. Rebuilding is another opportunity to live. Yeah, correct. That's what I'm saying. Often when people get a second chance, they often do much better. Correct. They work much harder. They appreciate it more, obviously. That's why, obviously, somebody who went through the Holocaust, I mean, and the money means totally different to them. Obviously, it's a whole different world. The Talmud of Rav Chaim also compared the ethical deportment of the scientist who worked with his Rebbe. What he had in this thumb did not possess in their entire fire-moving hearts. Okay, I don't remember that expression, but he was talking in a favor. He didn't have anything negative to say about Einstein and that thing. He was just saying that this scientist was describing the greatness of Einstein, but it was only in certain areas. Like he couldn't write it, he couldn't explain. I forget exactly what he said. He intuited it, but then to put that intuition down and to explain it as a formula, that was much harder to do. He sort of, it's kind of like I remember Rav Schachter telling us many times, and this Rav Soloveitchik said the same thing. I've quoted. It's a great posek intuits the answer right away. He doesn't look up the sources. You need to look up the sources because the halacha can't work because it says something, has an intuition. But so that's what the Rabbi can have a great intuition. Then he has his assistants tell me why my intuition is right. You find me where my intuition is right. But I just know. We've mentioned many times that's where the Rav wrote that when he was asking about being a military chaplain in the U.S. Army, despite problems of kashrut. The Rav said it has to be allowed. Don't worry me about all the sources. We'll find sources. It's allowed, and that's I know it sounds so against the way people are taught, but okay, we're taught a lot of Narishkeit. What can I?
Kelman,
Yeah. Yes.
what your friend was telling you is that Einstein had the intuition of the ideas, but when it came to putting it down mathematically, he had problems.
Correct. Yeah, correct. That's good. Yes, thank you for that. Correct. He knew what it was, but he couldn't actually formulate it into form. Exactly. Very good. The Ashkenazim are kleit mentioned. I don't know what that means exactly. I'm glad I know. I know that means something, but my Yiddish is really poor. So I said for Teichen for Besser because I knew that one from Shakespeare. But
I think they mean kalte, cold.
Which means what? Oh, cold.
Kalte, cold.
Yeah. Why did I say that we're cold?
Cold people.
The Litvaks are supposed to be cold. That's what they say. They have no. The Hasidim are warm. I don't know. I don't know what that means, but yeah, okay, whatever. Okay, Hashem grant us baseline kindness because of your traits. You will deserve a good life, right? Okay. Okay, yeah, we should pray to God should give us kindness. Well, we discussed a few weeks ago, can we pray for God to help us to do tshuva? We say why that is a problematic prayer, because it's not up to God whether we're going to do tshuva. So we explained that God can help us. We have to do the first step, and Hashivenu Hashem ben Hashuva, right? But you really can't pray for God to be a tzaddik, because that's up to you. It's not up to God. So there is that a lot. Okay, when we done before Hashem, we are like soldiers praying. We have the klal. We must be mindful that our prayers have the power to impact the entire community. Okay, good. Just as soldiers must fulfill their duties with greater good in mind. That's right. That's the in Chabad, the army of God, right? As members of Tzivot Hashem, we are fulfilling our purpose by keeping the klal in our thoughts and intention. Be mindful that we are just a peg in the wheel, yet our tefillot and plural educate us 3 times a day. We are part of the klal, and I need to be broad in our understanding. Yeah, very good. I agree with everything you wrote. Yes, correct. Who is responsible for a position of the vidu and prayer? You say I don't know who is expression, the rabbis, whoever set up, I don't know exactly who it was, the origins of the history of the Siddur, exactly when vidu was put into the 5 things. That's a very good question. I'm assuming that in the Beit Hamikdash, if you look in the Mishnah and Yuma, it sounds like only the Kohen Gadol did vidui. And the assumption I'm having from reading the Mishnah is the Jews didn't say a vidui. They listened to the Kohen Gadol. But what did the Jews do who weren't in the Beit Hamikdash? I don't know. That I don't know. It's an interesting question, but when
your
explanation, they distinguish between the private and the public. Yes.
Your explanation of that the vidui should be different in the when we pray privately versus publicly for the repetition, was that explanation, which was very pretty, was that from the Rav? Was that what you said? Yes,
that was from the Rav. It's in Al HaTshuva in Bein HaYachid Batzibur. It's the second essay in Al HaTshuva, which I said, and I highly recommend, and I would urge you to read if you haven't read it. I don't know if you can read it in Yiddish, actually. I would hope so, because it was actually given in Yiddish, but it's printed in Hebrew and in English. So please read Al Tshuva. It's fantastic. And that was our just eight of the drushes of the Rav gave every year between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. His famous Tshuva drusha. Okay, so I think that's it. Okay. Any other
Rabbi
comments?
Kelman, I
Yes.
just want to point out, if anybody understands Yiddish here, you can listen to a lot of Rav Soloveitchik's Yiddish drushas. Those Al HaTshuva drushas are on YU Torah.
Okay. How's your Yiddish?
Good, but it got better through listening to the Rav for years, because he spoke such a rich Yiddish.
You're lucky. You're lucky. My
Incredible.
Yiddish.
Yes, I'm grateful. I'm grateful to my grandmother for speaking Yiddish to me, so I was able to understand. My first yard side drasha was
very nice.
her
Tova
credit.
will tell you it's my parents' fault. My father spoke Yiddish to his mother because he was born in Europe. And age 3 always spoke. I mean, my grandmother knew English, but she lived in New York, so I didn't see her so often. My father always spoke to him on the Yiddish. He read the Yiddish newspaper, but my mother didn't know Yiddish when they got married, really. So she picked up a little bit. So only they didn't have enough secrets to hide from us to speak in Yiddish that I would pick up the Yiddish. Like that's how So they spoke to us in English, of course. So my Yiddish is non-existent. What can I tell you? I missed all the jokes and everything. Anyways, okay. Please God, we'll see you next week, and next week the beginning of school, but that won't affect our schedule. And anyways, Sunday Rabbi Liebtag, and if you haven't registered yet for our Elul programs, please do so. I sent out the email, and everybody should be well. Shalom. And thank you very much. Enjoy.
Where are the Yiddish lectures?
I'm sorry?
Where do you find those Yiddish lectures by the Rav?
Oh, so if you go on YU Torah online, and then you go to Rav Joseph B. Soloveitchik, and I think it may say Tshuva Drasha. That's what they're called. So there are a few. BCBM used to have them all, but they took all the Rav's stuff down for some reason.
I think they just published a book in Yiddish or somebody's Yiddish Drusha. I don't even know.
Yeah,
but
those were.
I mean, what's so amazing is the Rav's English was so spellbinding. He was such an amazing orator, and English was like his sixth language. Like it's unbelievable, the genius. I mean, he didn't know. I'm sure. I don't know exactly when he learned English. If he learned any English in Europe at Berlin, I don't know. Actually, it's an interesting question. Did he only learn English when he came to America in 1931 at the age of 28? I don't know. I find that a little hard to believe. I really don't know. But his English was beyond perfect. And because it was a learned English, sometimes his vocabulary is like a little bit funny. Like he uses, because, he it's not natural speaking. So some of his vocabulary is actually very, very, very beautiful, but it's very...
I think because Yiddish was his first language, he speaks the most incredibly in Yiddish.
Of course, that's what I'm saying. He was such an orator in English. Kal v'chomer. People say, you think he's good in English. You should have heard him in Yiddish. I meant, he
does throw in German. Just there was one word I was looking up, couldn't find it, and then I mentioned it to my mother, who grew up in Vienna, and she said that is German. That's not Yiddish, and she translated it for me. So,
okay,
verwandelt.
I'm sorry.
It was one of his favorite words is verwandelt, which means transformed. But I couldn't find it in the Yiddish dictionary. It's in a German dictionary.
Your mother told you it's a German word.
Yeah, because she grew up in Vienna, so she knew.
My father was born in Vienna, but he left at the age of 2, really, Vienna. So, yes. Marty, you wanted to ask something? I think I heard you.
I have one question. Is Rabbi Shapiro eventually coming back this year?
Yes, next month. You didn't read the email. I told everybody. Mark is starting next Monday night. Not Labor Day, not September 2nd, wherever it is, September. Right? Yeah, it's in the email. Yeah, Mark is. He always takes off. Well, he was with us. He was leading our trip to Spain, and then he's busy traveling. He always takes off in the summer, and so figure you wanted to start next week, not this.
I read the email.
It's there. The Musar dispute. He's continuing on the dispute. Yeah. It's starting next Monday night, 8:30 p.m.
I was very fortunate to live with my grandparents. Always lived in the home with that, and I spoke to them
in Yiddish. Right. Okay. I didn't have that. My grandmother, my mother's mother, came to Canada at the age of 1. Obviously, English was her first language, and my grandfather came as a teenager and spoke fluent English. So my mother was raised in English. My grandparents spoke English, and my father's mother, my father's father had passed away. My father's mother, she spoke English. I mean, Yiddish was her more natural language. So my father spoke to her in Yiddish, and my father yelling, a Jew, I don't know Yiddish, but
you don't know how many secrets
right.
I
That's it.
learned from people.
Right. A lot of my friends speak Yiddish because they're children of survivors.
No, but
their parents would speak to them in Yiddish, and they would answer in English. Like I had friends like that. They're my next door neighbor. Like his parents spoke. They knew English, but I spoke to them in English. But the parents spoke to the kids in English and Yiddish, and the kids answered in English. But the kids.
I discovered a lot of people secret by sitting next to them on the bathroom bus.
I'm sorry, you.
When I was riding up and down on the bathroom bus.
Oh, on the bathroom bus. Yeah.
Stuff that people didn't.
Yeah, that's the main Jewish street in Toronto, Bathurst Street. Runs through the city. That's anyways. Okay, we're gonna everybody have a wonderful Shabbat. Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom and Chodesh Tov.
Okay, Chodesh Tov. Be well, everybody. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you so much.